Welcome to Leadership Kung Fu with your hosts, Sandi and Jennifer Long.
Hello and welcome to the February 2026 edition of Leadership Kung Fu. My name is Jennifer Long and I am from Own Up in Denver, Colorado, which we are now calling Accountability at Work, FYI.
Oh.
And I am here with my co-host and executive coach, Sandi from Satori Consulting in Toronto, Canada. Hi, Sandi.
Hey, Jen. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again. Today we are talking about the topic we are going to wrestle with is stop outsourcing your thinking. And how might you rebuild your team's problem-solving muscles? Some of the biggest skills organizations are really needing right now are critical thinkers and complex problem solvers. And how are you cultivating those in your leadership kung fu? So I will start this episode by tying us back to last month when we talked about strategy, right? And talked about strategy having to be on your calendar and all the things we did. But if you're going to have strategy and you're going to have good strategy, you got to have some good critical thinking. And one of the things that really can jeopardize good plans, good strategies, good decision making is not thinking it through, not doing the critical thinking, not using the muscles you need to internally to address the work that your business does.
Okay.
So, if we want to get to better problem solving and teams that don't escalate all the decisions to the top, this is where we want to start with. And so, just kind of talking about why is it like, if we say outsourcing thinking, let's define that first, right? So when we're talking about outsourcing, what are we talking about, Sandi?
We're talking about leaders that do the thinking for others. So for their teams, right? Make all the decisions quick on the bunny because it's faster. We're talking about that the hero leader that is there to solve all the problems. We're talking about outsourcing using AI for your problem solving. We're outsourcing what else? Knowledge experts within the organization. Right?
The one guy that does strategy that we all know
that we all default to.
Yeah.
And so it's all these different things that organizationally we're doing that is not cultivating the leadership muscles of the masses of the many within organizations, because it's really left up to a few.
Right.
Or consultants. The consultant is the other thing, but I'm wary of saying
we
that
don't want to talk about
times.
Consultants. But you can get bad information from a consultant, right?
True,
so
absolutely.
It's right. And we're not anti-consultant, but we're definitely, you as coaches, we spend a lot of time helping you think through the work that you should be thinking through.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing.
So, no, it's not. It's not.
Right. And so let's maybe talk about what are some of the things organizationally that happen that drive this unwitting outsourcing, this intentional outsourcing. What's going on that is actually keeping you in a cycle of not having good critical thinking?
Well, the first thing I can think of is the cost of time that it takes to do the critical thinking, right? So there is that, so the lie we tell ourselves that we don't have the time to do things. And there's a cost to taking more valuable time up to do the critical thinking. So sometimes it's either easier to outsource to somebody who has already done it or who knows, or just to, do the first thing that sort of comes to mind versus spending the time asking the right questions and doing a little bit deeper and having the critical thinking skills in place to come up with the best right answer versus the answer.
Right. We don't the time lie is very expensive, right?
Mhm.
In the sense of when you are working at speed and under pressure, and you are under the illusion that we don't have the time that it's going to take to analyze, formulate, like all the things that you think, in terms of how to do it. And so what I would say is, A, that's not true. That you're actually going to spend more time doing rework, going back on your
Totally.
decisions, doing right because you didn't think it through, or you took the first answer that you got, right? So the whole the bias that we get into around the first viable solution or decision without really thinking through what else could we have done? What else could we
Mhm.
be doing, right?
Yeah. Which doesn't mean that you need to shift, right? Not always, right? When you start looking at alternatives, but you need to
Mhm.
think through the alternatives. You need to be able to answer the question when somebody says to you, "Well, what was the trade-off that you threw aside in order to bring this thing forward?" And have a good answer for it. So I think it's that critical thinking is really important.
Right? Because it's really easy to be critical of everybody else's decisions,
Sure.
especially when you know they're not taking the time
Mhm.
to think what alternatives could we do. And if you want actual faster decision making, more confident and clear decision making, the time you spend doing the thinking is going to give you better decisions.
Yes.
It's going to
Yes.
give you stronger, more confident decisions. It's going to be able to talk about the why of your decisions way better than working at speed and not doing it.
Yes. Yes. So the whole time lie, throw it out the
The
window.
time lie. Exactly.
Timeline. So, and that's a big one. I think the other I would say is probably I don't know, low accountability within organizations. You're the accountability coach, Jen. But that
Yeah, that we don't push each other to explore. We don't push each other. We don't and I don't know if that's what you were thinking when you said accountability. Um that can I just give this decision to someone else? Can we? So this leads into that behavior of learned helplessness.
hmm
I don't want to own the thing. I don't want to deal with the consequences of it. So therefore I'm going to push it somewhere where someone who makes more money than me can handle that, right? And because those who are in leadership positions often love being the people who know and kind of
yes,
some want the decision, some want
yeah.
to just take the reign.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking it's sort of along the same veins. I was thinking low accountability in that we're not keep holding our people accountable for using those muscles. And so the default would be go to the leaders. And so when you're not asking of somebody and saying, this is my expectation of you, then, as you say, there's, without clarity, you don't have accountability. And so if you're not clear as a leader of what you expect of your people, they're going to
Right.
default. And then you will be the knowledge expert always. And then what happens when you're the knowledge expert and, you get hit by the bus,
That's
right? Where does
right.
that knowledge sit? And what
AI comes for your job.
well, that's right. What's the injustice of holding all that knowledge to yourself when you have a team likely of people around you that you could empower with that knowledge?
Right. And different experiences and different perspectives. And so you power that all together, and your ability to innovate and come up with different novel ideas and things of this nature becomes much more impactful.
Yes, yes.
And so going back to the way you frame the accountability thing is what are you asking of your team relative to doing the critical thinking? Do you even have what would be a minimum standard when they go about coming to you with a solution or a decision on something? Are you asking your people, I need you to think this through. I'm looking for you to think critically around this project. And what that means is,
Yeah, what it looks like to me is,
yeah,
right?
right? Have you bound the problem? Can you
Mhm.
state it concisely to me so that I understand what you understand in terms of what you're solving? Can you put issues into concrete terms? Can you tell me what you want to try or what you have tried,
What
right?
have you tried? Good question.
What have you tried?
Yeah.
Can you share with me 2 or 3 other options that you've considered?
Mhm.
What were your considerations and how did you weight those considerations?
Mhm. it becomes a bit of a coaching conundrum on this one, because it comes up a lot. I don't know if it comes up
Uh-huh.
with you, Jen, but it comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Where as a leader, maybe newer leader, hopefully that you're newer to leadership when this happens, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to disappoint somebody coming to you, and it's just so you want to give them the answers, and not thinking sort of wider in scope, to say, if I ask them these beautiful questions that you've just delivered to us, Jen, if I ask them these questions, it's not like I'm not pushing them away. I'm not saying no. I'm not giving them the answer, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
just, you are, it's like a parent child. You're teaching the child to be a better thinker. You're giving them the tools that they already have inside of them, but you're allowing them to use them. And it is a beautiful, powerful thing. And so you need
It's
to,
a fantastic thing unless you judge it and call it stupid, and then you create, right?
yes.
And so when we talk about how this gets disincentivized, right? Because the scenario is you've given your team a project, and what they come back with, you're disappointed.
Mhm.
You're disappointed. And why are you disappointed in what they've delivered to you? And a lot of times that goes back to they haven't thought it through at the level you were expecting. I get a lot of this shows up in comments in coaching sessions with executives around, I don't think my staff understands what completed staff work means.
Right. And why don't they? Because they haven't been told or haven't been shown. Right?
Right?
The-
Because if you're not, if they're either haven't been told or been shown and given these kind of what we're calling sort of a minimum standard around critical thinking, um, in terms of your problem solving, but they also culturally, right? Are the judgments done in such a way? Is the psychological safety there
That's
in
right.
such a way that people can push on things,
Mhm.
question things, right? Because critical thinking is nothing if not a bunch of questions. And
Yep.
some of that is around status quo or uh, sacred cows or things that we're like, well, if we're going to do this, well, why are we doing that? And well, so this comes up for us, right? But
Mhm.
if we're making assumptions, we can't touch that stuff. And then you're disappointed in what the innovation is lackluster.
Right.
How are you defeating that?
Yeah. And psychological safety, that, has been a huge term since COVID, for sure.
Mm,
And it's so incredibly important. And you can't create a safe space that, when people are when they bring something to you that is, in your estimation, half baked, but
mhm,
they had no clarity on what fully baked actually means. And so, there's many ways that you can sort of help them get to the fully baked stage. I'm going to use
mhm.
that analogy a little bit more. Um, which is, one is, are you checking in with them on this project throughout, a little bit more frequently than beginning and end,
Mhm,
right? And that's not
mhm,
disempowering. That's
mhm.
ensuring that they have the right tools. And so, you know, making sure that you start checking in, asking them the questions, not even the right questions, asking them the questions. And I think the other piece to that is not having a culture where, failure, and I hate that word, is not an option, right? And so
Mhm.
we'll call it something softer. We'll call it, mistakes. You can have you can have mistakes, right? That
Yeah,
all builds that psychological safety, which allows for the conversations to be had.
right, right, and to ask the difficult questions, especially if you're doing projects around sensitive areas of, those kinds of things, there has to be the trust and the, um, lack of judgment and criticism.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, because I'm just thinking of tone and facial expressions. Like, we all know when, you've brought something to a boss that they didn't like it, right? And so, how do you change that to a learning moment, right? As opposed to a moment of judgment. And I think that's one of those really critical things. I think, that having that, at the outset, does the person, are they capable of actually doing what you want them to do? Have you asked them if they
Mhm.
think they're capable of doing it and what it
Well
actually means?
well, yeah, and when you look at some of the research around these skill sets on complex problem and critical thinking, it's like you can't test for this stuff, right? There's
Mm-mm.
no there's no way to know. So if you're not creating learning and understanding around what kind of tool sets people need to do this kind of thing, to
Mhm.
understand the difference between system one and system two thinking, and to
Yeah.
understand when we make plans, how do we get to conversations around impact, around, secondary and tertiary impacts of decisions, and to even
Mhm.
know what those concepts are? Because when we talk about thinking something through, those kinds of things are the stuff that comes into play.
Right. And it just so for the listeners that don't know what system one and system two thinking is, I think that's important to note, right? System one is those automatic think thoughts, right? You see ice, you think cold, right? You see
Yeah.
a lip and you trip,
Right.
that sort of thing. And system
Recognizing
two
faces. Yeah.
is having to think beyond the things that come naturally to you, right? It's
Right.
that deeper thinking, and that's what we're really talking about in sort of that, um, the problem solving muscles is that deeper thinking, which comes from really good questioning and exploring and having that space in order to do that.
And you can feel it. You can
Mm,
feel your brain burn the energy when you do system two thinking,
yeah.
because your brain loves system one because it's easy and
Yep.
it burns less
Totally.
calories. And you're like, God, I got to sit down and really think this through. There's effort. It's effortful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much
Yeah.
so. Yeah. So what else? We've got
Well, so when we think about tools, right? What other
mhm.
kind of tools help you get to the kind of thinking around the work that people need, right? So we talked about assumptions,
Yeah.
right? What kind of work do you do? Do you even consider the amount of assumptions that someone brings to you when they give you, here's our final work product, here's what we're going to do. And then you say, how many assumptions are you making relative to this?
Mhm.
Stated or unstated, right? Like,
Right.
and it's you can't make plans and strategies without assumptions, but have you investigated those?
Right, right. And so that might be part of that setup and that clarity of when you bring something to me, I want to know what those assumptions were,
Yeah. What
right? Because
assumptions were made here? And have you accounted for, right, the impact that those would have?
mhm, yep,
Right.
for
Right.
sure.
I think another one is multiple options, right? How do you teach people to think about? So there's a tool that we do in Red Teaming called Alternative Futures,
Mhm.
right? So when you're looking at how do we look at it relative to these constraints, or how do we look into it with these constraints, and how are we building tools and capabilities so that options are um, viable, right? You're
Right.
not just I need three options, so I gave you one really good one and two throwaway ones because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. That when you're like, I want to consider three options on something, am I really taking the time to build out fully viable options that
Mhm.
all have different trade-offs, and knowing what those are and which ones recommended?
Yeah, yeah. Which it sounds it's so easy, right? It really is. It is easy. But it's really not done a lot, right?
No.
It's an interesting conundrum, I find, because it's you think that the basic level should be that, but it's not.
Hmm.
And so as leaders, how are you setting the stage for these activities to happen? And one
Hmm.
is to model the way, right?
Hmm.
And so sitting with your team and going through these exercises with
Hmm.
them so that they learn from you, not
Yeah.
just
Or
that
do you
the
even
experts.
know? Because let's just say, right? You might know, you might be good at assumptions, you might be good at a business case, you might be, but are you good at all of it? No, probably
Mhm.
not.
Yes.
Probably not. So, how are you looking into that? And so, I want to encourage the exploration, right? Get on your AI, get on your AI, ask some questions around what tools am I missing? Because you're probably missing a bunch. And you'll be
Mm.
surprised that there's a discipline and a rigor around doing the kind of thinking that we're talking about, because most people don't. They
Yes.
lean into experience
Yes.
and knowledge, and that is mistaken for the critical thinking.
Mhm.
No one says, here's my experience and here's my understanding. What's my bias on this?
Absolutely. And what is the issue of sort of leaning into that experience? You can end up with the same old because we've always done it that way, and we know it to be true, whether it's true or not. And so you end up with this, this not well thought out end product because it fits the mold of what you've always done, or fits the mold of what you think is somebody wants.
Right. Right.
So,
Here's the answer I know you want. So let me just dress it up
yeah,
for you.
yeah.
Let me just find supporting information for what I know you already want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the politics, right? And that's the politics of an organization are going to defeat your critical thinking. Hands down.
Yes. Yeah.
And so if
But
you're go ahead.
but what we want is not to succumb to it, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
know that politics can get in the way. It's heated all around the world right now, and if we succumb to that, our thinking will go by the wayside. So I think one of the asks of us to our leaders that are listening today is to sort of, you know, push back against the establishment, get back against the latent thinking that's happening in organizations, and sort of be a pioneer, be a leader in this critical thinking, because it's only going to make you better. So you're going to make your teams better, and it's going to make your organization better.
Well, it's going to make your AI integration better. it's going to
AI.
it's going to make your strategy better. I mean, there's just
Yeah.
so much benefit, and the beauty of it is you don't do it by yourself. More
Hmm.
brains are better than one. And so it's not about sitting in your office and mulling it over and mulling it over. You got your own biases, you got your own blind spots, you got your own filters, right? That when you do this with others, right? So part of this whole podcast is it's about the team, and it's about the
Hmm.
incorporation of many minds, not just yours, not just Ted, because he's the strategy guy. Is how are you creating the convergence of these kinds of discussions on a regular basis? How are you integrating this into your project planning, into your strategy trust testing, into your just, product deliverables
Yeah.
of how are we making better decisions organizationally in how we perform on a regular basis? And where does this need to be built in for leaders to coach others and teams to work together in looking at it, talking about it, doing it?
Yeah, yeah. I just want to touch on AI a little bit because we were talking before the podcast a little bit about AI. And I think it's important. This is a really good area to test your critical thinking skills, because when AI pushes something back at you, as critical thinkers, you need to be saying, is it true? What is it not telling me? And does it make logical sense? And would you have come up with the same, it's sort of like the reasonably prudent person rule. Would you have come up with a similar answer if you had thought about yourself? So be critical around AI because it doesn't know everything. Jen, you had an example today where it actually said to you, I don't think that's true. And you're like, I think it is.
Let me provide you with a link that you haven't considered. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's true, and I think there could be some latent thinking around that, and allowing AI to do the thinking for you. And it is a tool, is an enabler, but don't rely on it completely.
Exactly. And when we were having the conversation, and kind of part of what I really like about AI is it brings in a lot of stuff I wouldn't necessarily consider.
Yep.
Right? You're like, all of a sudden it's like, oh God, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I haven't thought about. And you're like, oh, you get excited about it. But the question is the other information that it's also brought to the table, is it relevant?
Yes.
Is it relevant to what you're trying to do? Is it really helping you found the problem? And so knowing uh the instinctive reflexes around when you read and you read critically, what you get, what are the questions that you ask back, and what does that discipline look like for you? Because that's going to be person project dependent, and just knowing that you've got people who have the reflex to do that versus let me just copy and paste this into. Because the other thing we talked about is when you outsource and you outsource your thinking, and you make decisions based on this outsource thinking, um, you're still accountable.
Yep.
You're still accountable for the decisions you make. You're still accountable for the impacts it creates. And that doesn't go away.
No. And I think the blow is harder if you sort of relied on something that really wasn't yours, right? So when it comes down to
Mm,
accountability and you're like, well, AI helped me write it, and you're still accountable, and maybe it's, completely wrong. And the blow is even harder. So you got
yeah.
to own stuff. You got to own it, for sure.
Well, you don't get a not to. And
Yeah.
that's the thing you don't realize. While it feels faster and better and deeper and greater than what
Mhm.
you could have come up on your own, if you don't do the legwork on it, you're gonna own a bunch of stuff you have no idea.
Yeah.
And you will suffer the impact of that regardless.
Mhm. Yes, for sure. So it's a tool. It's an enabler. It helps. It's great. Um, but don't rely on it completely, I think was sort of the moral of that story.
Right, right. So this gets down to leadership behavior, right? So when we
Yeah.
get into this, what are you going to do differently to engage yourself in better critical thinking? What kind of discipline do you need? Tools do you need? But what are you doing also to engage your team here? What are the behaviors
Mhm.
you need to shift to get to a stronger level of team engagement when it comes to this?
Right. One of them, I think, is, pause, don't solve.
Mm,
Right? Really step out of your, hero, I'm the knowledge expert, hat that you're wearing, and don't solve their problem for them. Right? That's the first and foremost thing that you can do. Asking
because if
questions.
you don't, you will never get answers that surprise you and
No,
inspire you.
no, innovation dies, right? And think
Right.
and organizationally now more than ever, innovation and small I innovation, big I innovation needs to happen. So
Yeah,
I
it's
think
no
it's
longer
really
your job in leadership to be the knower. It
nope.
is your job to be the learner and
Yeah.
to teach others how to do it too.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think that's an important thing to think about. What else? Oh, I think for your teams to grow and to learn, there needs to be friction, right? So, you need to be, they need to feel that there's a bit of a rub there that you're expecting more, but being clear on what it is that you're expecting, right? And
Right,
not be judgy when if it comes back not exactly what you're expecting, because it can be a work in progress. I think that's an important thing.
right, right. What are your minimum standards for the kind of thinking you want
Yeah.
to do?
Right.
Right? Be explicit, be descriptive, right? What does
Mhm.
that mean? Um, when people come with the question, right? In not answering, but finding the right question to ask back. And
Yeah.
a lot of that is just easy. Walk me through your thinking.
Yeah.
Walk me through what you've done so far. Tell me where you
Mhm.
are in this, right? To get a sense of what have they actually done? Have they brought this to me with zero thinking? Or have they
Right.
brought this to me with a lot of thinking and are looking for some kind of clarity? And so that also, in asking those questions, you learn exactly where your people are in their capability.
Mhm. Right, which is really important. Yeah, for
So
sure.
you can help target what kind of coaching you need to do, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, minimum standards, questions, how are you reframing?
Yes.
Uh,
How are you shifting from sort of thinker to a coach, right?
mhm.
You're not just the answer, but you're and it really is true coaching, right? True coaching is all about asking the questions and letting the people rise up to the occasion. And so in those moments, it's really, again, back to that, taking the time to really putting your coaching hat on and empowering them to use their critical reasoning skills because we all have them. They're just not always used to the same degree.
Well, a lot of them have been trained out.
Mhm.
A lot of them have been trained out. That's how schools are just set up. Is we
Sure.
teach the test and here just know how to do this.
Yeah.
But the other thing is learn how to manage your own discomfort. When
Hmm.
they bring you things because they're doing the work
Yeah.
that make you uncomfortable because then you don't know.
Yes.
Then you
Yes.
see things you didn't see before. You can see where you haven't or are not clear. And
Hmm.
so learn to manage your own discomfort. Don't shut down someone's effort around the critical thinking, the big questions that might surface. That bring you then here, this has come up for us in our discussions that you weren't expecting and make you uncomfortable.
I think we could
So
do a whole episode on that. That was like really powerful what you just said. That yeah, I think that was just brilliant.
well, and I think that's, how we shut down the critical thinking is
Yeah.
that we feel uncomfortable because you've thought something through and you can see a huge gap in what my understanding, knowledge, and ask was.
Mhm.
That makes me look like, oh God, I haven't thought this through, right?
Right.
But that's a gift. That's the beauty of it, is
Well,
everything gets better.
what is it? You're going from a leader to a leader learner, right?
Yes.
And you're showing up in that capacity and even using that language with people. So they're not expecting you to be, Superman and know absolutely everything. But talking about the fact that you want to learn from them, like that's the beauty of teams, right? Is like we all have different lived experiences. We all have different, educational backgrounds, all of that sort of stuff. Put all that into a melding pot, and you get great things can come if you allow it to happen. If it's not shut down because you're afraid of what people might think.
Yeah. And when you get to the root of why our team experiences the best experiences when we have a good team, this is why.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
when we are all learning together. This is what makes a really awesome team experience.
hmm
And that means you have to be uncomfortable
yeah,
because learning is discomfort.
yeah. Totally,
We're
totally.
all there because we know it's no fun.
Yeah,
All
so I
right.
think that's a good takeaway. But you talked about the minimum standards of what, so some takeaways, wrapping up a little bit around surfacing the
Right.
assumptions. So getting clear on what you as a leader are asking and expecting back, and
Hmm.
letting people know what, is it a fully baked plan or is it a half baked plan? Are you going to check in with them along the way? What are the expectations that they can meet you along the way?
Right. So, expectation setting is where it breaks down, right? How good are you? So when Sandy says things like fully baked, or I say things like completed staff work, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
Not just in terms of what you want results wise, but is there something around the level of thinking you're
Mhm.
asking them to do?
Yeah.
And how can you be more explicit in that?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't mean like, give me a 10-page document. Like, it's really about that critical thinking and how you got to that 10 pages. Like, it's the best 10 pages, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think, getting rid of that time myth, I think is another sort of takeaway for leaders is like everybody's busy. We're all busy. We're all running 100 miles an hour. But, if you don't take the time, it's gonna take you more time in the end because A, you're either gonna have to redo it or you're disempowering your staff and
Yeah.
disengaging your staff, which is gonna take more of your time down the road as well.
Yeah.
And so it's really, that is time well spent.
It always comes down to three things around that whole time myth, which is quality, cost, and schedule,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? Is that's what goes through our brains. And you can never have all three.
Mhm.
If you want it fast, it's not going to be good,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so what the wisdom says is if the focus is on quality, the cost will pay for itself, right?
Yeah.
And the time is going to be worth the effort
Yeah.
because it's going to be solid, good. You're not going to have to go back on it and redo it.
No, exactly.
There's no
Exactly.
no rework, right?
Yeah.
Good.
So that's important to say. What
Good,
else?
good. This is something you do with everybody, not just the people who demonstrate it, right? We
Yes.
don't select people who are inclined and lean on them.
Yes, you talked about, the guy in strategy. What was his name? Bob,
Bob,
right?
Bob the
Bob's strategy.
strategist. Yes.
Um, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You gotta be fair to everybody and allow everybody to sort of rise to the occasion. And again, part of that is, what you're going to get with certain people because they always put their hand up. They always say, "I'll do it," and they're going to do it well. But again, to that whole empowerment side of things, people see what happens and they see where you go to get your work done, and they're sort of looking, well, what about me?
Right.
So
And if the same people are always rewarded, you're going to reinforce this cycle of helplessness.
yeah, yes, exactly. And so I think the other thing is think about your culture and what you are rewarding. Are you rewarding critical thinking? Are
Mhm.
you rewarding the time it takes to do a really good job at thinking through problems and problem solving? Or are you rewarding time?
Right. And this has direct impacts on burnout.
Yeah.
When we take the time to think things through and we feel good and energized around the decisions we make, and we're doing it together,
Yeah.
we're not just looking at Bob and wondering why Bob can't pull his head off the keyboard because he's the guy who's got to answer all the hard questions.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And, and Jen, you started out talking about the fact that last time we were talking about strategy and how strategy can't just be a PowerPoint or a document sitting in a desk. This is a really great topic to say, take that strategy document, dust it off, take it to your line managers and your department heads and say, do some critical thinking about what this means to you and
Mhm.
how you're going to further our strategy, as opposed to waiting for somebody to tell you what to do.
Yeah. Or give you a goal and call it strategy.
Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's an important aspect of that whole strategy piece.
Well, and part of the strategy too, or it's a strategy about critical thinking, is when you're in these groups, right? When we work as a team, everybody kind of assumes roles in a team, right?
Yeah.
I'm the note taker, I'm the antagonist, I'm the kind of I'm the one who will ask the brave questions, like whatever that might be, right? If you've got a devil's advocate in there already, if you've got somebody in there who's checking assumptions, right? If you have them, great. Or if you don't, get intentional.
Get
All
six
right, we're
hat
gonna have a
thinking, right?
right, the six
Use a
hats, right? We
model
can talk
like,
about Edward de Bono, right? And the six
yeah.
hats. And put those roles in the room,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you are working a project, who's the devil's advocate in the room who can speak to those things? Who is the assumptions checker who will say, give me clarity. There's a lot of assumptions in what you just said, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you engage them in these specific things? And yeah, Edward de Bono's six hats is a
Yeah.
great model
Mm-hmm.
for putting this into play. And that's a good resource
A
if you're
very
going to
good
do.
resource. I use it a lot. I think it's a great tool. And, it just makes you, it doesn't, if you don't know it, it doesn't allow you to go into all the reasons why something won't work when you're forced into talking about why it will work for a little while. So
Yeah.
oftentimes we use in workshops, I'll say the speed limit in Ontario is 150 kilometers, 150 kilometers in all streets. Why
Yeah.
is that a good idea? Right. And they're like, well, it's not, but why is it? Right. Oh, well, we get there faster, that sort of thing. And then, then you go through it. And at
Contrarian.
the end,
Yeah.
you can tell, well, why isn't it a good idea? And of course, it's not a good idea, but it forces people outside of their comfort to think about different ways of doing it. And exactly what you're saying, Jen, is have those hats, have those people, have those thoughts around the table.
Right. Right. And here's the thing. How do you start to get out of the trap of right and wrong?
Mm,
Because I think when we are afraid to have a wrong answer, it shuts down our thinking
sure.
completely. And so as a team lead, as a leader in the room, in the dynamic of this, is there are no wrong answers. There are answers.
Hmm.
And there are tools and mechanisms to get to the ones we all align up to,
Yeah.
but there's no wrong. And that's part of what the judging and the criticizing and the shutting down behaviors foment. So part of what you got to practice is stop looking for the right answer.
Yeah.
Just
Shift
like Rob.
from I need to be
Yeah.
right to we need to think critically. We need to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So shift from one to the other just allows that space.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
So hopefully those are some good solid things you can start to look at and understand the impact of what this skill really is and why organizations really need it, especially now, to make decisions faster in what feels crazy, right? What
Yeah.
feels complex, what feels ambiguous, what feels too fast in terms of change. Because the thinking is what's going to help you make sense and make decisions about it.
Yeah. So, result of this, we've given you lots of tools, but, maybe you can self-reflect after listening to this podcast. How are you at critically thinking? Or, how much are you the hero in sort of answer giving? And then take it to your team. If you're a team lead, take it to your team and ask them, do we critically think enough? Just ask the question. And, if you ask a question, you'd be surprised at what answers you get. And it may just change how you interact.
Right. And how many places have you abdicated thinking? Have you
Yeah.
abdicated it to something else that you need to reclaim it?
Yeah. So some critical self-reflection, I think, is a good place to start.
It is. And so, in summary, hopefully you have all some different thoughts. You're thinking critically about how you think.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's right.
You're noticing where you have opportunity to do this, and start first with where your disappointments are in the work that's getting given to you, when the results people are delivering are less than.
Yeah.
Where does the thinking fall short, and where could you possibly incorporate that into your DNA, your interaction, and your coaching as a leader?
Yeah. Yeah. And sort of, I was just say, maybe not always looking down, like, where are you not critically thinking enough when you're bringing things up as well? And so I think there's a whole 360 sort of view of this in order to get it solidified within an organization. So
100%.
start thinking critically.
Start thinking critically. Call us. We have tools for you. We'd love to hear what your tools are, what you're doing, what ideas you have, your
Yes.
thoughts on this, and how you could share and help with others on what your journey's been. If you feel like you're doing a good job of it, if you're not, share this with those who think, if you need more of it, how to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And so, share this podcast with your friends.
And if there's something you want to hear about us talk about it, put it in there. Bring us your ideas. Otherwise, we will see you next month, and it'll be a surprise what we're talking about.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Jen.
All right, Sandy. Enjoy Toronto.
Will do. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. You can check out Sandy's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI Consulting, INC.ca. And you can check out Jen's website at accountabilityatwork.com. If you like what you hear, let us know by leaving a review on your favorite listening platform. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.